So springtime of year, we are kind of in that time of year where there's potentially a lot of stuff going on. Initial water temps here in the morning, 64.8. So it wasn't super cold last night. So I imagine the temps on this lake have been in the low to mid 60s for maybe the last week or two. And I think I just had a walleye follow me up there. But we're just gonna go bass fishing today, see what we come across. You know, this time of year is kind of a junk fisherman's dream, you might say. You got a lot of rods on the deck. There's potentially a lot of different things going on, maybe some pre-spawn, probably some spawning fish, and probably some post-spawn fish too. So this body of water has both largemouth and smallmouth in it. So we got rods kind of rigged up for both species today. And we're gonna just kind of see what we come across. This time of year, I really like to move pretty quick until we get a bite or two. You know, when we start getting some bites, then it's time to slow down, pick things apart, and see if we can maximize those areas. So it'll be interesting. There's a lot of visual cues that you can key in on this time of year, whether it's using your eyes to see empty beds or beds with fish on them, or activity up shallow. And then if we do happen to get some better quality fish, you know, we can look at those fish and they can give us a visual cue of, you know, are they fat, healthy, not marked up? So pre-spawn fish, or they kind of scarred up, bloody tails, maybe tells us they're spawning or done spawning. So those are all things we want to really be paying attention to on these spring days where we're in the midst of, you know, that tricky pre-spawn, spawn, post-spawn period. And every lake's different, and every little basin can be different on a lake. This basin we're in now is a little shallower, and so it probably is a little bit warmer than some of the other basins that this body of water offers. So yeah, these are fun days. We get to do a lot of different things, cover some water, and hopefully run into some fish. It's a good way to cover ground in these areas that are, you know, right now that just a super shallow bay with some lily pads. This little 4-inch swim bait on a weedless swim bait hook comes through this stuff really well. You know, even if you end up not hooking these fish, they at least might tell you there's some activity in the area. You could slow down and pick it apart with a Texas rig or maybe a stick bait, but just a weedless swim bait hook. I think this is an 1/8 ounce, so pretty lightweight. Allows you to keep it up near the surface and just wind it through there. And I mean, it's only about 1.5 feet deep here, so you'd be hard pressed to throw, you know, like a 1/2 ounce bladed jig or something through this stuff. There's one right there. That's a little largemouth. Not a great big one, but that's a start. Tells us there's maybe some fish in the area right on top of the snout there, right where you want it. Probably a little male, not really marked up or anything, so that's definitely not the size we're looking for, but it is still fun to catch. That one came closer to this beaver house, which, oh, there's another one. If you find a beaver house in a shallow bay, be sure to make a few casts. They're usually magnets. So another small one, chunky one, a little bit bigger on that 4-inch. One thing to really pay attention to in these shallow bays like this are little depth changes, little depressions. I think that's not only does the cover of a beaver house like that attract bass, but the beaver will actually dig out trenches in and out of that house. And so it creates like maybe a 1-foot ditch in an otherwise really shallow backwater. You can see how shallow it is here, and then there's a bit of a ditch next to it. Pay attention to those things, and you know, those really slight depressions in an otherwise featureless mud bottom bay are really key. There's a largemouth. All right, that's a decent chunk. Texas rig bronco bug. Decent chunky largemouth. Maybe a bigger size male or a female that might be spawning. She's a little marked up, you can see here and on her tail here. So that's just another indicator maybe where we're at in the spawn here. She's either coming or going, or there could be a bed down there in the reeds. There's usually hard bottom around those. You know, around the spawn in the spring, that sun is a huge deal in terms of fish movement. So whether that means fish coming up and locking on beds, or fish simply moving into a shallow spawning area. Right here, we've got some pencil reeds. Some people call them bulrushes, buggy whips. You know, we see them in our natural lakes oftentimes, and these are great areas to target around the spawn. They'll stage on them pre-spawn. They'll spawn right around the bases of these too. Reason being is typically pencil reeds are gonna be growing on hard bottom. Visually, we can see some rock and sand down there. And so I just picked up a Texas rig and I'm just slowing down and pitching to the bases of these little pencil reeds. That last fish, we missed it on the first bite, threw back in there and it bit again. We didn't visually see a bed, but there's a decent chance that that fish was maybe on a bed. It could have just been hanging out at the base staging in that area too. But whenever you get around these buggy whips, there's a bite. You want to slow down during the spawn. Oh, come out of there. There's a decent one. That's another decent fish. All right, that's a good chunk. Another good indicator on this one, you guys, if this is a female, you see how flat her belly is there? That's probably a post-spawn fish. Another indicator of kind of where we're at. They're probably out of that pre-spawn mode, more spawn, post-spawn. So another quality fish right at the base of those pencil reeds, just slowing down with a little bronco bug. There's a largemouth. That was on the 4-inch swimmer. All right, that's a chunky one. That might be a pre-spawn fish. We were talking earlier, those cues in the spring of what to look for. See how fat and healthy that fish is. Maybe a little mark on her fin, but that might be a pre-spawner. Up in the pencil reeds again, you might be able to see the hard bottom rock. Some of the largemouth might eventually spawn around here, but this one, just wheeling this little 4-inch swim bait around. Just looks like a little bluegill. And that one was right up on the edge there. From here on, there's another. That's a little better largemouth. Oh, he's not huge. On the mare. Some pencil reeds are definitely holding these things, which they'll live in these year round, but as we've talked about around the spawn, they're great places to target. There's another one. That one feels big. Bigger. Oh, that's a smallmouth, I think. Gosh. I guess there's some fish in this patch of bulrushes. That's a chunky smallmouth. Gosh. Well, we're getting a little spoiled here in this patch. That's a beautiful, healthy, full of eggs still. We found the magic bulrush patch. And that can happen in the spring. You get in one little area like this where they prefer to, that's where they want to be to spawn, and caught 4 of them right out of this little patch. That's pretty fun. That's a better one. There's a good largemouth. Oh, that was on a swim jig up in the reeds. Oh, there's a good one. Gosh, what a beautiful fish. That's a nice female on the swim jig. Man, we had a little bit of a lull. We had to get back into some of these pencil reeds. Like we caught some better quality ones in earlier today. And then we went into some shallow mud bottom bays and it just kind of wasn't happening. Got back towards the main lake, some pencil reeds. That's a beautiful, beautiful largemouth, probably 4+ pounder. Really got that swim jig good. I'll show you her fins here in a second if I can get this thing off. You can tell she was probably rubbing, maybe spawning up there, but just swim jig came across her and she just smoked it. That was a beautiful fish. Sweet. Finally got a good largemouth.